Do you remember a time in your life where you were eagerly anticipating something? Maybe you heard your favorite author was going to release a new book. Maybe you learned a sequel to your favorite movie was in the works. Heck, maybe you learned that you'll be going on your dream vacation in a couple of months. Regardless of what that moment was, do you remember the days leading up to that? Do you remember the anticipation and excitement that you just couldn't contain? And do you remember the moment your dreams finally came to fruition and that very thing you were looking forward to was not only in your grasp, but it managed to hit every note, meet every expectation, and then some? Well, that, my friends, is my long-winded intro on my experience with today's OTOME game, Virche Evermore ErroYa. But let's take it back 2 years ago to where it all began. 2021 was the year that I really dove into the OTOME genre. At that time, I was trying to keep up with all the new releases, not only in the West, but also in Japan. And that ultimately led me to my discovery of the Japanese release of Ou遠のヴィルシュ, ErroYa, which would later get the English name of Virche Evermore ErroYa. Developed by Hide Inc. and Ultimate, and published by Idea Factory, the game was released on October 7th, 2021 to very well reception, selling over 5,000 copies in its first week of sales, surpassing any other Ultimate release that year. With its impressive sales and overall praise from OTOME fans, it was really only a matter of time before it would get picked up by localizers overseas. And that was exactly what happened when Axis announced the localization at Anime Expo in July of 2022. Granted, we would have to wait patiently another 16 months till its English release, but that time had finally arrived on November 9th, 2023. So what is this title even about? What made this game so unique that it garnered such well reception, and why did it capture my heart like no other game? Let's take a look and find out. But before I get into this review, I must put out a massive disclaimer that this game deals with a lot of heavy, sensitive subjects that may be difficult for some players. And when I mean a lot, I mean a lot, okay? Virche deals with topics and situations such as violence, suicide and suicidal ideations, murder, and a whole whack of it at that in nearly every way you could think of, body horror, descriptive scenes of gore, verbal and physical abuse, torture, brainwashing, and drugging. Please be sure to do your research and understand what's in your comfort level prior to playing this game. Also, I feel like I have to make a disclaimer about this too, but a lot of the names and places in this game are French, and I barely got by with my elementary school French, so je suis désolé if I butcher this, but I'm gonna give it my best shot. Here we go! Virche Evermore ErroYa takes place in a small country named Apicel. In this country, surrounded by black flowers of disaster, called licorice noir. Each citizen born here bears the curse of death that will bring their eventual death at the early age of 23. Those who decide to pick a flower of disaster will only hasten their demise, and it's because of this, these flowers are despised and avoided at all costs. In an effort to defy the curse of death, a life-changing technology was invented that will transfer a person's memory into a clone of themselves once their original body passes away. These people are then granted another 23 years of life, and they may repeat this process time and time again, never aging, never changing. These people are known as relivers. In a small orphanage lives our main protagonist, Ceres. She has come to be known as the Maiden of Death, as many of those around her have met an untimely end far before their 23-year expiration. After one certain event leaves her lamenting in a field of licorice, about to take her life, she's interrupted by a man claiming to be the Watchman of Death, who offers her a deal. Help uncover the truth behind mysterious deaths that are appearing across the country, and he'll turn her into a normal girl. From then on, Ceres will uncover more about the curse of death, the tragedies around her, and the true horrors that are lurking in her country. This game is broken down into 3 acts. Act 1 consists of the prologue, Act 2 centers around the common route and the first 4 suitors, and Act 3, Les Saluts, focuses on the final route. There are 5 main routes, but only 3 will be available to play at the beginning. So let me introduce these love interests first, starting with Mathis. Mathis is the second son from the Claude family that has been in the business of publishing for generations. He's timid and shy, and would much prefer to spend time alone in his bedroom with him and his novels. But when he hears that the Maiden of Death is investigating unexplained deaths across the country, he offers her valuable information in exchange for joining her team. Next up is Lucas Proust, a traveling teacher that often holds classes at the orphanage where Ceres lives. He's a devout follower and believer of God, but always teaches his students with an unbiased opinion. Concerned for his students' well-beings, he too joins Ceres investigating the mysterious deaths. Moving on, we have Cien Brofeis. He is the oldest Reliver and the mastermind behind the Reliver technology. A man with next to no emotions, he has little interest in others and will stop at nothing to better enhance his Reliver technology. Once you complete Mattis, Lucas, and Cien, you'll unlock the fourth love interest, Eve. Eve is a member of the Corps and the owner of the handyman business, Karun. Many seek his help for any and every task, such as building furniture, tending to gardens, or cleaning. A man with a kind and gentle soul, he never turns his back on someone in need and always tries to see the best in people. Now once you complete those 4 suitors, you'll unlock Act 3, Les Saluts, which includes Adolf and Anku. Adolf is a young man that grew up in the same orphanage as Ceres. He's the leader of the Corps and someone many of his fellow members look up to. As Ceres' foster brother, he's always looking out for her and doesn't believe she's at fault for the misfortune around her. Finally, we have the Watchman of Death, Anku, a man who appears before Ceres as she's about to take her life and offers her a deal. Not much is known about the supposed Monitor of Hades, and while Ceres can't fully trust him from their first encounter, she can't deny how appealing this deal of his is. Now what makes this game so unique, and was a major selling point to OTOME players, is that you must complete all the despair endings for each suitor and complete Act 3 before you can unlock their salvation good ending. What this means is that you'll have to watch these characters go through the most gut-wrenching, heartbreaking experiences before you can even see a glimpse of happiness. Not to mention, each suitor has 2 despair endings and a couple of dead ends spread throughout the entire game, so 90% of the time you'll be feeling nothing but sorrow for these poor characters. I want to stick on this topic for a bit because I don't think I can stress enough how this game is filled with despair, and more despair. I will give this game props though at how well it fills you with a constant state of dread. I mean, the game literally starts off explaining that everyone dies by the age of 23, so that's really setting the scene, and it only gets worse from there. Even if you begin to see a glimmer of hope, it almost instantly gets snatched away. It's like if Virche was a person and tripped you, they'd apologize, but instead of helping you back up, they'd then proceed to step on your leg and break it. You'd then go and get a cast and crutch, only for them to come and kick the crutch out from under you, and then for good measure, set your crutch on fire. Hell, they'd probably set the hospital on fire too so you couldn't go back. This is what I mean, this game doesn't hold back, but instead constantly makes these characters go through more and more trials and tribulations that leave you feeling utterly hopeless. And you know what? I loved every minute of it. Now, call me crazy, because from the way I just described this game, you'd probably think, who on earth would want to put themselves through all that heartache? It is I am that fool. I put this down to 2 reasons. 1, the writing was engaging and brilliantly executed. No one route felt needless or repetitious, and each act seamlessly flowed into the next. Reason number 2 was that I knew if I could push through this swamp of despair, I'd come out on the other side for the salvation endings. And I was right. The salvation endings were worth the heartache. But did this mean that they were all happy? No. Some will still leave you with a bittersweet feeling, wishing for more. But I think there's a beauty in that. Not every story has a happy ending. I think many of us OTOME players are used to the typical love triumphed all, the pair finally got together and lived happily ever after. But in a country cursed by death, that's just not realistic, is it? I like that this game didn't give you wild expectations and truly stuck to its theme of despair throughout its entirety, despite it leaving me in a near constant state of depression. And who needs seasonal depression when you can have Virche depression? As for the music and art in this game, I thought they were both phenomenal. The main artwork is done by Yomi, who previously worked on the popular Japanese otome Kengekimi, and it's nothing short of beautiful. From the CGs, to the character sprites, to the backgrounds, everything was visually appealing, and it's become one of my favorite otome games art-wise. Plus, our female lead Ceres gets her own character sprites, and that's always a win in my eyes. The music was composed by Jun Ichikawa, and it's one of my favorite video game soundtracks. From the daily slice-of-life tracks, to the sweet confession melodies, to the "oh god, I think I just witnessed a murder" soundtrack. Each tune is atmospheric and sets the scene perfectly. As for this game's love catch system, there's 2 things to look out for. One of them will be a licorice blooming when you've made a correct choice to increase your affection with the respective love interest. The goal is to have the licorice in full bloom and glow by the end of the game to reach the intended ending. The second thing to look out for is static. If you see this appear on screen, it means you've made an incorrect choice, which will lead you to a bad ending. Not necessarily a despair ending, but a bad one nonetheless. On the title menu, there's a flowchart where you can keep track of all the scenes that you've already played and where you may have missed a certain ending, which is really helpful when trying to complete all the endings. Overall, I think Virche has one of the most clean and visually appealing game interfaces I've ever seen, and it made the playing experience all the more enjoyable. Now let's talk about the voice acting because, oh my gosh, every single person knocked it out of the park. From the main characters to the sub-characters, every single person put their all into their performance, and they absolutely nailed it. I couldn't have seen a better cast of seiyus. I could literally sit here for a good half an hour just gushing about everyone. I could talk about the voice of Cien, and how his voice has me feeling some type of way. I could go on a tangent about how happy I was to have Kazuyuki Okitsu play a main character in an OTOME, because I needed more from him after he played Tsukiyomi in Olympia Soirée. But if I had to pick just one seiyu that I think went above and beyond, then it would have to be Saito Soma. His performance as Eve blew me away. There are quite a few scenes in his route where you can just hear the sheer raw emotion, and you can tell this man was giving 110% in recording. Overall though, I think every single actor did a phenomenal job. Now let's get into the hard-hitting question. Who was my favorite character? Now, normally I would just tell you who was my number 1 favorite, maybe my second favorite too, but I can't do that with this game. I loved every single route and every single character for one reason or another. I would happily replay every route again in a heartbeat. So instead, what I'm going to do is rank every single love interest. Alright, here we go. First up, it's a tie between Adolf and Anku. You literally cannot make me choose between the two, and since they're both in Act 3, I'm cheating and I'm putting them both at number 1. I knew I was going to love Adolf from the get-go, but man, this guy just went and set a whole new standard for me for love interests. As for Anku, you really don't learn too much about him until you reach Eve's route, and even then he's still shrouded in mystery. It's not until Act 3 that you really get to uncover more about this mysterious Watchman of Death, and what I did learn left me uncontrollably sobbing. So no, I will not choose between the two. They're both excellent in their own way and rightfully deserve first place. Next, at number 2, and he's only in second place by a minuscule fraction, is Eve. Eve deserves all the love in the entire world, and that's proven time and time again in his route. His route gives off the destined to be lovers vibe, and although my heart screams for Adolf and Ceres to be together, I can't help but wish for Ceres to end up with Eve too. His route guarantees to pull on your heartstrings and will leave you teary-eyed more than once. Coming in at number 3 would be Metis, which was incredibly unexpected because I thought he would be my least favorite, but man, I love when a character destroys my expectations. His salvation ending is one of my personal favorites, and his ending CG is gorgeous. At number 4, we have Cien. I was not expecting the way his route unfolded, and I'm not gonna lie, I loved his main despair ending. Is it sick of me to love a despair ending? Ah well. Finally, coming in at number 5, we have Lucas. I loved his route, and I thought it had some of the best, most shocking revelations, but love interest-wise, he just wasn't my favorite. He deserves all the love in the world too though, so just because he's 5th on my list doesn't mean I wouldn't die for him. As for our main heroine, Ceres, I just want to wrap her up in a warm blanket and give her all the love in the world. She keeps her distance from many due to her being known as Death, and it was heartbreaking to watch her be shunned by townsfolk and the other children at the orphanage. When she finally begins to open up to others, I felt like a proud parent watching her come out of her shell, and I was rooting for her the entire time. She's extremely kind and thoughtful, and not to mention a wizard when it comes to cleaning, cooking, and sewing. There's just something so endearing about her that easily made me put her in my list of favorite MCs. Now, I often don't talk about side characters, even though they play a critical role in each route, but I'm going to touch on them for a moment. This game has the most emotion-provoking, rage-inducing characters that I've ever come across, but at the same time, I couldn't help but empathize with them. Even though I'd love nothing more than to toss most of them into the sea of Arpachel, I can see where their actions stem from and why they are the way they are from the experiences they've been through. They're complex characters who have been through more than you can imagine, and despite me knowing that I should hate them, I couldn't help but feel sympathy for them. These characters were extremely well written for each respective route, and then continued to be expanded upon in further routes. So just because you hated them in one suitor's route, doesn't mean that you won't change your mind later down the line. Except Capuchina. That guy. As I mentioned at the beginning of this video, I had been waiting for this game since its Japanese release 2 years ago. And as I was patiently waiting for its English release, I started to worry that I was overhyping myself for this otome. What if it didn't live up to my expectations? What if it really let me down? I even accidentally spoiled myself in one route prior to playing the game, and I thought that it would hinder my playing experience. Well, now that I'm at the end game, I am happy to announce that, for me, this game was complete and utter perfection. I enjoyed every single minute of Virche, and I was so hooked I completed it in about 2 weeks. For me, that's an astonishing record, considering that this title took me about 55 to 60 hours to complete. I never found this game repetitive or boring. Even when Act 3 was twice as long as any other route and recapped earlier events, they always put a twist on said events to make them feel as fresh as can be. I thought the world building and lore of this story was well developed, and I love how everything came together in Act 3, solving any unanswered questions and reaching a grand finale. As I replayed the routes to unlock the salvation endings, I began to notice little tidbits here and there, and I realized that this game had been dropping hints about the finale all along, and I absolutely love when a game does that. Not only does it make me appreciate the writing, but it just makes me want to replay the game again to see if I missed any other hints along the way. The entirety of this otome is centered around despair, and it pulls no punches. Every time I thought it couldn't break my heart more, it somehow found a new way to do it. I will honestly tell you guys that I cried in every route. Every single route. I didn't even think that was possible. This game managed to yank more tears out of me when I thought I had none left to give. And then, to make it worse... Wait, should I even admit this? Why not? The day after I completed Virche, I was thinking about the Les Salut route, and I just started crying again. Maybe I'm a tad emotional, but this game hit me, and it hit me hard. Even reaching the salvation endings still left me with a stinging feeling in my heart. But even after all that heartache, I still think this game wouldn't have been nearly as impactful if every ending was as happy as any other otome. And, dare I say it, but I think I actually liked some of the despair endings more than the salvation ones. There's beauty behind madness, and Virche Evermore exemplifies this in every aspect. So do I recommend this game? Yes, absolutely, with no hesitation. That being said though, this game absolutely in no way will be for everyone. Please keep in mind the trigger warnings I discussed at the beginning of this video, and please do your research when deciding whether or not to pick up this otome. Keep in mind that this game is dark, somber, and heavy. Chances are you won't be walking away from it with a spring in your step. If you prefer more lighthearted, happy otome titles, then steer clear of this one, because honey, this game won't be for you. This game is also primarily story focused, and romance takes the back burner for almost 75% of the time. So if you're looking for something that's heavily romance based, I can't say I would recommend this one. Also, keep in mind that this is a fantasy game, so you will be coming across the most wild biology terms that logically makes no sense whatsoever. Personally speaking, I can throw all sense of logic out the window when playing a fantasy game. You want to cure my lost limb by burning a strand of grass that grew on the Sage of Time's mountain peak? Sure. You want me to drink this elixir of a fire salamander to cure a drought in a village? Well, bottoms up! So while it doesn't bother me in the slightest, if scientific accuracy is important to you, then you may find this title frustrating to get through. And please, if you do decide to pick up this game, my only wish is that you try to go in as blind as you can. There are so many twists and turns throughout this story that will leave your jaw hanging wide open, and even if you do suspect what'll happen next, I'm sure you'll be shocked by another revelation 30 minutes later. I never thought that another otome could top my all-time favorite, Olympia Soirée, but lo and behold, Virche Evermore managed to rise to the top and snatch that first place trophy while simultaneously punching me in the gut. And you know what? I ain't even mad about it. So what's next for the Virche series? Well, as of September 7th, 2023, Japan has seen the release of the highly anticipated fan disc, Ou遠のヴィルシュ, Epic Licorice, and I truly believe it's only a matter of time until it gets its English localization. I already have a copy of the Japanese version just sitting in my backlog, so even if it doesn't get a Western release, don't you worry, I'll still be seeing my beloved characters get their well-deserved happy endings. So I hope you guys enjoyed this review. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below and I'll get back to you guys as soon as I can. And if you'd like to see what rating I gave Virche Evermore, please feel free to check out my visual novel database account that'll be linked in the description. If you enjoyed this video, I'd really appreciate it if you gave it a like, and if you'd like to stick around and see more otome ramblings from me, then feel free to subscribe. Now you'll have to excuse me, I have to go hug my family, touch some grass, and recover what's left of my emotions. Until next time folks, see ya!